Kharnita Mohamed, and she'll be presenting a paper on death, disability, debility, and analytic of injustice. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here after lunch. So for the past few years, I've been thinking about disability, and disability not as an identity, but disability as a way to allow us to think about violence and what violence does as an experience, what violence does in producing forms of life. During my PhD research, I realized that I was expecting disability to be all-encompassing and to be doing a whole lot of work, and that I was missing the connections between disability, death, and a newer concept, but that's been in circulation recently, debility. And so as a conjunctural concept, so death hyphen disability hyphen debility is the concept I've been started working on in the thesis and am working on developing. So my theorization of death, disability, debility as an analytic of injustice, so a way to think about injustice, to analyze injustice, is as the materialization of injustice. What does, injustice do to our bodies, to our psyches, to our relationships? And invariably, multiple forms of injustice at different levels produce either death as its end, and we know that the concept of death has been used very widely. The idea of slow death, the idea of social death, the necropolitical. But what this is a metaphorization of forms of life that are continuing, and very frequently those forms of life are forms of life that are impaired, so people are impaired, or they're debilitated, and very frequently what debility is as the sort of diffuse, massified condition is it's one of those conditions that isn't recognized because we think of it as normal. So as an analytic, this sort of concept allows us to name violence, because I think in the ways in which we use violence doesn't have meaning, really. Violence doesn't really take on a particular kind of meaning because we don't know what it does, right? It's like this is violent, that is violent, but how is it violent, and in which way is this violence manifested? And this analytic, I think, allows us to engage these processes of world-making and these processes of subject formation, because we become people through our exposure and vulnerability to death, disability, and debility, which we're thinking about all the time in many ways. Like it shapes where you go, what you do, your particular kinds of fears around it. And so even though these conditions are related to each other, they're actually not the same. And they should be studied separately, but I think bringing them together for particular kinds of analyses is very, very useful. It allows us to think about the nature of reality, and it allows us to think about large-scale social arrangements and how they work to produce hierarchies in different ways. So even though we're all enfolded in conditions in which our, early death usually, in which the possibility for impairment or disablement is present, and debilitation is something I think we all feel in diffuse, very interesting ways, even as middle-class people. We should still, of course, remember that people, we aren't just the violence, we're also joy, we're also love, but how we arrive at some of those conditions is through the negotiation of these forms of violence. So just an elaboration of the term. So death, what is death? So it's the cessation of physical life often, but this is a very contextual and ontologically bound idea of death, because we don't all think of death as the end of life, right? It's the transformation of a set of relations depending on your sort of cosmological relationship to the world. So not everybody thinks death is the end. Disability usually is sort of recognized impairment, which somebody may recognize or the state may recognize, and it is a social process. It is a social condition that requires particular forms of recognition, whether from the state, whether your own sense of being impaired. It can be visible or invisible, and it encompasses, physical, sensory, intellectual, psychoaffective forms of impairment. And it doesn't, because it's social, what is considered impairment or disability in one place might not necessarily be considered impairment in another place. But because we have these large-scale international and global organizations, through NGOs, the WHO, etc., the translation of these terms has reshaped how we think about what disability might be, even though the ideas of disability might be taken up in particular ways, in particular contexts. Then debility is, the massification, so Jasper Pura speaks about this as the massification of injury. So those conditions where what we think of as structural violence creates ways of living that don't allow us to thrive. So if you think about what impoverishment does and the lack of adequate housing, people get respiratory illnesses, but it doesn't get thought of as impairment, right? It's respiratory illnesses, skin care, people get diabetes, and we call them lifestyle diseases, but this really is about a relationship to food and access to food and access to particular forms of things that we think about healthcare. When you think about healthcare and inadequate healthcare, what this means is that if you've had particular conditions that limit your thriving, if you don't have access to health care, you slowly get sicker and sicker and sicker, but you don't necessarily become impaired. But debility very often, so if you, diabetes is a good one to think of, right? Debility very often will lead to forms of disablement. So you might have you might have an amputation, and it might also lead to early death. We're thinking about the ways in which mental health conditions are produced through debility, right? You're so tired, you're too tired to fight, you're too overworked to do anything. Your mental health becomes reshaped, and it might become a medically recognized impairment, and it could lead to early death, so suicide and a whole range of other conditions that are produced by stress, neurological disorders, etc. So it is very material, it is very physical, even as it's located within what some theorists call the body-mind. And very often we think of debility in a very normative way. So the fact that most black people, 10 minutes and it's my second slide. So then most black people will die earlier in South Africa in the early 60s versus people who have everything they require to thrive, because debilitation is also a capacitation system. Your debilitation actually produces capacitation for somebody who doesn't have the same exposure to vulnerability. And how this is often thought of, and we think about, this idea of structural violence, which most of us are familiar with. And there's a feminist philosopher, Elena Roos, that says, settler colonialism offers us these very weak concepts. And structural violence, though it's very useful, is also in many ways a weak concept. Because, and this is an idea that I've begun to develop and will be working on over the next few years. Structural violence in South Africa within systems of racialized governance really is a form of attritional warfare. A form of warfare that produces attritional lethality. So you get worn down through the abandonment of the state, which in its sort of arrangements through spatial segregation and the inadequate housing, inadequate healthcare, inadequate access to social mobility through education, the violence of everyday life, produces multiple forms of debilitation in different ways, which may lead to disablement, but there are also spectacular forms of violence. So if you get together and you protest, you will publicly be tortured through, rubber bullets and tear gas, all which produce effects not just on the body, but the distribution of psychoaffective life. It destroys community. It does a whole range of things. So these different kinds of violence that are meted out, they produce death, they produce impairment, but they also do work as a form of racialized governance to produce debilitation, so that you produce a docile population, a governable population. And so these different kinds of violences work together, and it's a form of racialized governance. There's an apartheid general who said, we're busy with the war of attrition, and we're attacking people at every level. There's very little work on attritional warfare because it's thought of as one of the most immoral forms of warfare, because it's one of those forms of warfare where if you have unequal protagonists in this form of warfare, then the kinds of annihilation and the kinds of destruction, which are not total forms of destruction, even as they are total forms of destruction, because you still require a labor force that you can work through, right? And if you think about how labor works, for example, in the mines, in factories, etc., where people, they go in and they get used up. So they might not become impaired, but they will become impaired when they're outside of the mine because they've been debilitated, and it will lead to an early death, and that has a whole series of consequences, which are related to the burden of care, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a relationship between them, and we have to still try and figure them out. But this is a system of governance that is used to maintain, justify and produce rule, racialized rule. Because, if you say, they're too weak to manage themselves because they're too debilitated, it justifies rule. So it does a whole lot of things. So this, this idea that I've been working with and trying to elaborate, and as I've said, I'll be working on it over the next few years. It's integral to, 5 minutes, thank you. It's integral to hierarchization because it creates and maintains and justifies hierarchy at different dimensions, whether it's racialized governance, whether it's forms of class governance, so you can work like a lower or blue-collar workers into an early death or into debilitation or into impairment and not recognize it. Your exposure to death, disability, debility intensifies depending on where you're located intersectionally, but I think every one of us is subjected to it. I don't think anyone in a neoliberal economy actually escapes it. But your capacity to get the things you need to thrive, if you have medical aid, if you have access to varying kinds of support, if you become impaired and you can afford a carer, et cetera, ameliorate some of these conditions. And so what I've begun to think about, and I'm stuck a little, and it would be useful to get some help with that, is to think about the elaboration of this analytic through gender, right? Because when I think about masculinities, I think, so being and identifying as, cisgender male, for example, exposes you to death, disability, debility through labor, through, the kinds of work men do, through risk-taking, through interpersonal violence, men's violence against others. And what I thought with was gangsterism in places like the Cape Flats, you know, where if you're in a, because most of the participants I'd worked with, like, you know, all of them became impaired through acts of violence perpetrated by other men. But men too, as we know, deploy tactics of creating and sedimenting fear through death, disability, debility on women or people who are not cisgender or people who are queer. And, you know, and Phumla's work has been essential to think through what the female fear factory might be as a system of debilitation that is ontoformative. It produces life through time, right? But in varying ways. And it, you know, it produces worlds, and it depends on it depends in many ways on an imaginary of death, disability, debility. You don't go to a particular place because you're afraid you're going to be killed, or if you're not going to be killed, you're going to experience an assault of a particular sort, and you know, and those are all materialized. If a man beats you, the beating doesn't disappear. We just don't think of it as something that has the capacity to impair. But we all, because so many of us are afraid of being beaten and killed, we are debilitated or can be debilitated. And so, but because it's so complex, because, you know, particular kinds of masculinities experience this, and it's not recognized, right? We don't think about how mining, for example, as a system, produces large-scale death, but the numbers, which there's so little studies on impairment in mining, for example, right? The numbers are horrifying. It's genocidal. You know, it's a genocidal. But that's a particular sort of kind of exposure. But gender regimes, like other regimes of inequality, whether it's class, whether it's race, depend on death, disability, debility, and that conjunctural sort of effect. Last slide. And something that, thank you, Yvette, for our conversation last week. Yvette said, like, is overwork decolonial? And so a lot of my work has been, because I thought with, you know, crowd control, what crowd control does, what do rubber bullets do to a body, what does, you know, tear gas do to a body? You know, those are because the protest might be a fleeting event, but the after effects stay with us, whether they're psychoaffective or physical, right? And things like, you know, mining, like the Marikana protest, you know, as spectacular violence, and what we counted were all the dead, but not the people who were impaired. And I don't think anybody's really thought about the psychoaffective effects of an event like Marikana, and this is true of most protests. The same with Fees Must Fall. I'm almost done. 1 minute. The same with something like Fees Must Fall, where, you know, people were publicly tortured. Like, protest literally is a form of public torture that is done and justified through the kinds of bodies that these technologies are deployed on. But anyway, so there was, and I thought about, you know, gangsterism and mining, etc., but and impoverishment and housing and what that does to bodies and psyches, etc. But when we begin to think with the middle class in our own condition, because I think that's an important question, right? When you think about your own condition, where you're perpetually overworked, you're perpetually, I'm almost done, you're perpetually overworked, you're perpetually having to hurry. It's a form of wearing down. It's a form of being worn out. It's also a form of checking out, because you're too tired. You're too tired to relate to your own life. You're too tired to do the things that produce thriving. You're too tired to produce the kinds of relationships that produce community. And what does that kind... I mean, and it's also about sitting at your desk. Like, if I think of my own life, like, you know, I eat my feelings. And this has physical effects. It does something to your health. When we're sitting at our desks for hours and hours and hours and we're not moving, it does something to our bodies. It does something to our capacity for relationality. And it affects our energy. And I think there are political... I'm done now. This is my very last point. And it does something to our capacity to create political relationships that change the systems that we're in, and I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that conversation. I wonder how your paper would speak to concepts such as self-care and that movement that began.
Thank you.
So our next speaker, Joy Ifeanyi Joseph, she will be presenting Stinging Bees in Omawumi Edwards, The Echo of My Piercing Scream, a stylistic analysis.
Stinging Bees in Omawumi Edwards, The Echo of My Piercing Scream. The Echo of My Piercing Scream, a stylistic analysis. I'm in the Center for the Study of the Afterlife of Violence and Reparative Quest. So we're carrying out a stylistic analysis. And anybody who is good at linguistic stylistics here, please help us do something, do justice to this. So I'm open to very constructive criticisms. And why do we choose the topic, Stinging Bees? Because we have the patriarchs and the letracs in our society who sting us. We don't want to come out straight and say they're stinging us. That's why we put it in a metaphorical order to say stinging bees. You know, when you go to trial, sorry, I'm a Christian, you become smart by finding a way to coin your word and at the same time passing your message across. So it's a poem, and I just want to go straight to the poem before I address what I'm supposed to do quickly. I have Mr. George, Ifeanyi Joseph, against the oppression of women in the society. Female genital mutilation involves the cutting of the woman's clitoris to control her sexuality. This is a cruel practice that is perpetrated against women. Women who go through this process are sometimes left with complicated health challenges, and in some cases, they die. Save the life of a woman. Help us put a stop to this process. The echo of my piercing scream. On a farm, you walk to the path of our doom. The way dark and narrow. Destination unknown. Like sheep, we are led to the path where our destinies will change. You, dear sister, you led me to the debasement of womanhood, where my happiness becomes a feast to the gods. You led me to the world of pain and fear beyond description. You punish me for a sin not committed, that I may be your pride. Face up, knees up, and light apart. Pairs, pairs, pairs. Oh, pairs, pairs, pairs. Pairs of hands on my head, pairs of hands on my limbs, pairs of hands on my arms, pairs of hands on my torso. The mixture from the gird is not affecting. Ha! The strength of the world ox is failing. Watch. Oh, Mama, did you suffer as I did for acceptance? This pain that released the echo. So that's that, sorry. So that is the poem, The Echo of My Piercing Scream. It speaks to female genital mutilation. Where I come from in West Africa, the woman's clitoris is cut off to control her sexuality. It is a way to subjugate, oppress, marginalize the woman. And this puts the woman in very difficult situations. It's a challenging process. So why is this done? Because our society is a hegemonic and patriarchal society. In West Africa, the woman is expected to be seen and not heard. This is because she's considered as a necessary evil.
The woman is the order. The woman stinks. The woman is the object. The man is the human being. Now, one way the society tries to control the woman is to put her perpetually under violent practices that linger from generation to generation. So this is a transgenerational problem. When you say on a fowl, we are looking, it's symbolic, like you are in the army and a command is given. The woman has no right to disobey this command. So it's like a supreme order in the hegemonic and patriarchal society on a fowl. The file of, like you see in the first slide, the woman stays on the file. It's an order coming from the patriarchal society you have to obey. We walk the path to our doom. Now you see them running, they're walking to their doom because in the process of carrying out the female genital mutilation, some women survive, some women die in the process, and some women's reproductive organs are amputated for life. That is why they say we walk to the path of our doom. Destination unknown. After the practice, you are not sure of what your destiny will become. You are no longer you. You have been transformed from the you into another person. Like sheep, we are led to the hut. Like sheep, comparison. As I told you, this is a stylistic analysis. You are like a sheep. What that impels is a woman should not speak in the society. You should be calm, gentle. Hello, Professor Puna. How are you? Can I get some biscuits, please? Oh. That's how the society expects you to behave. So when you are like me that is vocal, you are stinking. I don't know if you understand. You're supposed to like, oh, Prof, so that's why they say like a sheep, because a goat is stubborn. A woman, those are qualities that should describe you as a woman. You should be calm, gentle. You just take whatever they give, they punch your head, you accept it, sit down, you accept it, bring water. So that's why they say we are led to the hut. The hut, when they say led to the hut is a small place. It's suppressing the woman that you should not be who you are supposed to be, where our destinies will change. After the process of going through female genital mutilation, I can assure you, the woman is no longer herself. You, the day sister. In West Africa, the days are this is represented the matriarchs, the mothers, some mothers who carry out this practice. So you, the day sister, they decide that okay, it's time to mutilate the girl. You led me to the debasement of womanhood, regardless of your relationship, because it's a societal, it's an order, like we say, it's on a fowl. The mother, some matriarchs, taking instructions from the men, the patriarchs, led the woman to the debasement of her womanhood, where my happiness becomes a feast to the gods. That's what you see here. The happiness of the woman. The woman is no longer who she is. So after this process, I'm sure you know there is the shedding of blood. And that shedding of blood is to help the society to get better. So the woman's blood is like sacrifice to make the society better. So it says, you led me to where my happiness, the happiness of the woman is sacrificed as a feast to the gods. So the gods, the society is feasting. Yes, we have succeeded in bringing down the woman. You punish me for a sin not committed. Because I am a woman, I have to go through this process. That I may be your pride. If you don't go through the female genital mutilation process, you're not seen as a woman. So when you finish this process, you become a pride to yourself, in quote, which I don't agree, to your mother, who accepted that you should be led to the debasement of your womanhood and to the society in general. Now, if you do not accept to do this, you are kind of, depending on the cultural structure, you are ostracized from the community. And this practice is still on. That I may be your pride. Going to the next one. Face up. knees up, wide apart. I had to put this comic picture because it's traumatic. How they open up the one, they give a command, face up, knees up, wide apart, open this stuff. Pairs, pairs, pairs. The pairs of human beings the pairs of hands, pairs. So when there's repetition, it's to create emphasis, emotion, to evoke the emotion of the reader to know the gravity of the harm or the violent practice that is being perpetrated against this woman. Pairs of hands, because the woman is not going to accept. So they're going to get pairs of hands on my head. They press her down, trying to change her destiny like they tried to change some of us, and we refused him. Like, no, we must rise. They press the woman's head, pairs of hands on my limbs. They put her down, pairs of hands on my arms. This demonstrates the subjugation and oppression of the woman in the society. Pairs of hands on my torso. Her torso is her body where she's... So the mixture from the God, and when they go through this process, you see, that's what is happening here. You see them. The mixture from the God is not affecting. Let me say that this is a traditional practice that does not have anesthesia. So when they finish this practice, they give the woman some herbal mixture to quell the pain, which eventually does not work. So she says, the mixture from the God is not effective. The strength of the wild ox is failing bush. Why is the woman referred to as a wild ox? It is assumed that if a woman is not mutilated, the woman is wild. She's talking. So one way they feel you want to shut the woman's mouth is to mutilate her so that her strength will do what? Her strength will fail it. But enjambment, what? Continuation, as the poet writes. Oh, mama, she's calling out to mothers. Oh, mama here means that it's not just for herself. This is something that is transgenerational. It goes from generation to generation. Did you suffer for acceptance? This pain. So for you to be accepted in the society, you have to go through such a violent practice. Did you suffer for acceptance? This pain that release the echo of my piercing scream. So this is what this poem is saying. And, okay, mama is symbolic of the fact that the process is passed on from one generation to the other. Her mother had gone through the process, indicative that the process must be abolished. The poet glorifies the mother as she is an idealized mother, unveiling her submission and glorification. She cries out to mothers, mothers are affectionate and kind. Symbolically, this is a cry to mothers, white gatekeepers, a cry for a change, a cry for liberation, a cry for collective fight. Why amputate the woman's clitoris? The fight against female genital mutilation is a collective fight and calls for inward search. The patriarchal and hegemonic society need a total overhauling as to indicating violent practices perpetrated against women. The emphasis on mama, because most times the parties have been addressed, may not express the needed concern. So what we are saying here is that we are calling on us all from the academia to say this practice is on. We need to put a stop to this practice. There is the other part of the poem which deals on rape. The face up, knees up, either part. It's like the cruelty, the violent practice is staring at the woman, face up, knees up, wide apart, pairs, pairs, pairs. That's female genital mutilation. And it also explains how when a woman is going to be raped, like face up, knees up, wide apart, the cruelty of such practice is staring in front of the woman. What are we saying? This is a practice that is still going on. It's a call for a change that we team up and fight together. Thank you very much. Okay, I would like to introduce somebody very special, and I want to say this, Pull Another Woman. I want to say this is Professor Pumla, my host. Amidst all odds, she picked me up. She believed in me, and I'm grateful to her. If she did not pick me up, she just said, Joy deals on sexuality. I had a very bad experience, but I'm happy that she picked me up. Yeah, and then that's why I'm able to get AVEC. So I'm saying to us as women, pick up somebody. It's a fight. We can't do it all alone. A lot of us are bright. We don't get it. But I wonder how If she didn't do that, I won't be here today because it was a real fight. And that's Dr. Sam, my friend. That's Melanie, the other guy, all collaborators of Center for the Study of the Afterlife of Violence and Reparative Quest. Thank you very much.
I think it's also important to realize that we're not just doing feminist work, learning about feminist research also comes with how we interact with each other, how we support each other, especially supporting each other in our research, because that's where the real feminism comes to play. For our final speaker, is Ememobong, Udoh, and Golden Ekpo, Golden Motlatsi. He's representing women now live like men, the role of gentrification in the subjugation of anti-feminist taboos in Udoh communities, southern Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, as you've heard from the chair, my work, or our work, is about taboos in Nigeria that are actually meant to subjugate the women. And I, by way of introduction, I'm not a feminist, let me say so. Professionally, I teach in the University of Udoh, Nigeria, and I do core abstract linguistics, that's phonetics and phonology. But I got into this somehow, yeah, because I did something with a student on this some 8 years back. And when I saw this call, I remembered that. Then this my colleague, Golden Ekpo, who is actually from this Udoh, said, okay, let's check for this, and we'll be able to get some data on this, and then we send the abstract. And it was accepted. I also am a postdoc fellow, AHP here. I've been here for 11 weeks now, and I was supposed to leave last week, but because of this, I had to stay because my colleague could not come. All right. So the agenda here, we have the abstract, the introduction, background, which has anti-feminist taboos in the African societies. We may look at the theoretical and then conceptual concerns, and then so on. All right. We already have the abstract with us, so I may not bother with that. By way of introduction, we know that any society that stays without a set of rules or regulations or codes of practice might be heading towards disorderliness or anarchy. And of course, that's why societies have this. Yeah, and one of these set of rules is actually taboos. And taboos are, we would say, native commandments. Do this, don't do this. We were actually born to see this. It's an intergenerational thing. So I know people have heard that this is a taboo. We have taboos mainly we know of taboos in African societies, Asian societies. I don't know about the American or the European societies, but every African, of course, knows that this particular thing is a taboo. There are taboos like don't go to this stream on this day. Yeah, where you have a stream as your only source of water. There are days you don't try to go to the stream, so that's the taboo. Of course, that's the general taboo. But in this work, we are looking at taboos that are centered on women, that are actually anti-feminist. And these taboos are normally, the custodians of these taboos are the village heads and the chiefs in council. They custody these taboos and make sure they are adhered to. You don't break it. If you do break it, of course, sometimes it's banishment from the society or giving some things like cows, goats, and many things. So people are there to custody these taboos and make sure you don't break them. So we are here looking at these taboos as social mechanism of obedience, which have ritual significance. There are several definitions of taboos, but we are looking at it from this perspective. That's number one, that from what Steiner 1956 gave to us, that with all taboos here concerned with all social mechanism of obedience which have ritual significance. So in this case, whatever taboos we have about the women in Udoh community, Udoh is in the south-south of Nigeria. It's an oil-producing state, and is actually a waterland area. So here it's made sure that the women adhere to all these taboos. So we are here to look at these taboos, how they affected the women, the attitude of the women now and even men about these taboos, and also the status of these taboos, how they're working. We are also here to say that one thing has brought about the subjugation of even these taboos. We know that there is urbanization as well as gentrification. So these have actually brought down these taboos. They are no more as effective as they were. Okay. Looking at taboos in the African society, we want to talk about only two. One of them is the taboo that, okay, someone just talked about this here, something about menstruation. I know some of us know about this, that menstruation in the African society and even the Asian society is looked at as something dirty. So when a woman is menstruating, then you don't have to touch food. You don't go near a man. There are places you don't get into. I know that even in the religious circle, I don't know if it's still practiced. Some churches you don't serve something in the church. Even you don't even go to the church. Or some religions, not only the Christianity. I think I've read about that. So it's not this one is not only a matter of the African society. It cut across many other strata. Okay. We hear in Nepal, menstruating women were sequestrated in menstruation huts. We heard that, and we also got this information from Nigeria Health Watch that in the Senegalese communities, people think menstrual blood is impurity, filthy, and evil substance. Therefore, these women were forced into seclusion, and of course, it really affected them. So Nepal and Senegal are here just mentioned, but a lot of our other African countries or communities outside Africa still practice these things, which is against women. Another kind of taboo that is known is, in Nigeria, I know about that, is what happens to a woman when she commits adultery, a married woman. What happens is that the husband dies. A woman commits adultery, but the husband dies. Why does the husband die? The woman is attached to the husband. The husband is the breadwinner. She lives with the husband, is expected to depend on the husband. Therefore, when you commit adultery, your husband dies, so your joy has been taken away from you. And what happens is there is the possibility of your husband, your late husband's people, to throw you out of the house, and then that's the end. That's where you find more bitterness. So it happens. So, the myth surrounding this is that when you commit adultery, the ancestral spirits that are against adultery will be the ones to cause your husband death. He doesn't die immediately. He starts falling sick. He falls sick, and if people then know why, people will then try to know why this illness. If they don't go to the seer to check, and the seer says the wife has committed adultery, if you are fast enough to appease the gods, he can come back to life. But if you don't know about it, you just keep quiet, the man will die. A very recent example in the southeast, Enugu, May 27th, of this year, May 27, 2023, a woman named, what's that name again? Martina, has been committing adultery, and the husband has been falling sick. So on that particular day, this man was caught committing adultery, and what happened? Meanwhile, the husband was still sick. The youth had to chase her out of the village, pack her things into a vehicle. It's in the news. You can Google that. A woman called Martina from Ekpo Obolafo in Enugu State. She was banished from the community. So that's it. So, our question here is, we are not saying these women should do what? Should commit adultery. But the question is, do we have such taboos for cheating husbands?
No.
No, they are not. Okay. Right. So theoretically, we think we should look at the feminism from the liberal perspective. That's liberal feminism, where the women are not supposed to be radical about whatever happens to them. Yeah. Somebody talked about. I mean, my Sierra Leonean sister talked about this. What they did is actually within the purview of liberal feminism. Yeah, they did not go radical, but they tried to do something to do what? By the government, by the heart of the government, to do some things for them. I think that is one thing we should think of. We believe we should look at feminism from the liberal perspective and not the radical perspective. It is our thought anyways. All right. All right, so gentrification, we are looking at it from this perspective. Gentrification, where some wealthy people somewhere decide to come over to a well-liked area to live. And in the course of doing that, what happens? They displace the original owners of those places. So in Udoh community, this actually happened. People from Oron, where the cost of living is quite high, decided to get over there. So the Udoh people, they mingled with them and slowly pushed them out. But coming from that place, they came with some other way of life. In that case, their own culture did what? Tried to mingle with the culture of these people. There came a kind of urbanization. People thought differently. Women groups sprang up, and so on and so forth. So people then saw that things like this should not happen again. And then this, in a way, has helped what has happened in Udoh community. So we are going to look at these different taboos. Now we look at the taboos about village and family gathering. In Udoh, women cannot drink palm wine or any other liquid from the elephant tusk. It's only the men that do that. So we are doing the taboo, and whether that's still active. That one is still active. Only the men drink from the elephant tusk. It is a taboo for a woman to cross her legs. Yeah, I saw my chick crossing her legs. That is, in an African society like Udoh, a woman cannot cross her legs while sitting with a man. It shows disrespect. Yeah? So that one is still active up till today. It's still active. That's why you have yes there. Okay, it is a serious offense for a woman to hit on the table before men. You don't do that with men. So that one is still there. It's still active in Udoh community. Now we have this one. Women are not allowed into the town hall. They were not allowed, but today it's no more active. So that's why I have no. It's no more active. That's after gentrification. It's no more active. No woman can summon or use the word, okay, in our societies down there, and I'm sure you have it here. Before you want to talk, you say something like, they say, Owe. People will answer. Something like that. I don't know if you have that here. You should have that. So a woman would not do that. It's only in the reserve of men. That one is still effective as of now. So for village gathering, a woman cannot eat the testicle or heart of an animal. Only the men do that. So that one still holds. A woman cannot touch a bottle of drink at the gathering, but now they can touch it. So unless you are given. Yeah, you can't touch it unless you are given. But now that has been relaxed. So a woman cannot be head of the family, of course, that's still effective from what we learned. A woman cannot have a share of her father's property except family members deem it fit. That's what happened. But now they've relaxed it. They can still share. But the woman cannot show the man the boundary of their land. No. Who are you? You can't show the boundary of their land. Even if you are the only surviving person, you must look for some other person to show that boundary. So that one is still effective. Now, it's a taboo for a woman to talk back at her husband. It was then, but well, no more now. Okay. So, a woman, it was a taboo for a woman to dress very well when the husband's corpse is there. So you dress shabbily, tattered when you lose your husband. Yeah, but now it's no more effective now. But you can wear black. Make sure but you have to put on black, but not shabbily any longer. It's a taboo for a woman to sleep with another man while still wearing her husband's mourning clothes. That one is still effective. Okay. It's a taboo for a woman to work when her dead husband's corpse has not been buried. No more effective. Because people now have white-collar jobs, you have to go to work. So, about childbearing, any man who has slept with a woman that has given birth to twins cannot walk past a particular path leading to a deity of purity. So you cannot. So what happened there is that women that gave birth to twins or triplets were seen as abomination. So that one is no more active today. How many minutes? Okay, that one is no more active today. A warrior ceases to be a warrior once you sleep with a woman who has given birth to twins or triplets. So if your wife becomes a mother of triplets or twins, you are no more a warrior. But it's no more effective anyway now. So that's what gentrification has done, urbanization has done today. And of course, liberal approach to feminism has done today. Yeah, for the Udoh women. Women don't get initiated into secret societies in Oro. For example, the Ekpo, Egong, on those things. Of course, that one still holds. Masquerade things are supposed to be for men. So, of course, women, I'm sure they've left that one for men. But when it's not permitted to perform masquerade like men, is an abomination, yes, it's still there. There is a taboo that you don't peep at, that you don't look at the window when the masquerades are on display in Oro. Don't try that. That was then. But now, they can still look at them. Before now, women never went out on masquerade days. You don't go out. When it is masquerade day, you stay indoors. So the day before then, you make sure you go to your farm, get food, go to the market, get food, get enough things, so you don't go out on the masquerade day. But today, the women still go out. No problems. Okay. There are some community sacred things. Women don't touch the Atayada stool. It's a stool, like we would say, the stool of the king of Makanda, for instance. A woman cannot touch his stool. So that one still holds. You can't touch the chief's stool as a woman. And you cannot even access the village shrine as a woman. Yep. No woman can be named Anti. Anti is the name of a warrior. So you can't name your daughter Anti, no matter how powerful she'll be. Only men get that name. So we also have a taboo. There's a taboo in Udoh where women do not wear any form of underwear on the night preceding the burial rite of a family member. No underwear, no panties, no nothing. It is believed that the pants hinder the dead spirit from reincarnation. So you don't put on any underwear on the night preceding that burial. So, well, that one is no more active, it's no more effective. A woman cannot lay hands on a man's head. She is a lesser entity. A woman cannot put on trousers in the village. That one is no more effective. A female can never go uncircumcised. There must be female genital mutilation. It's no more effective. A woman or a girl cannot shake hands with a man. Well, it's not effective. So we can see that most of these taboos are no longer effective. We have 28, out of 28 of them, 15 of them are no longer effective. So it means the women are trying. And what they actually did, they did not go to fight with the men. They did not go to fight, but some advocacy, talking to people, and people saw that this thing should not be there. The truth is this: these things have custodians. These custodians are still alive. And the custodians actually took some oath to do what? To protect the culture of the community. So if the custodians would say, let us relax some of these things, I think they have done well. So the thesis of this paper is that women should continue to do what? To talk about these things, but not to fight. Yeah, fighting is not everything we need. We don't need fighting. Let us take liberal feminism into practice, and we will continue living together. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think now comes the real fun part. It's been an honor to chair this panel. It's beautiful how all these ideas just seem to like mold into each other. With our first speaker talking about debility, and then speaking about female genital mutilation is another form of debility, and then mentioning how the women's bodies are considered dirty, and then you go on to the next speaker who then talks about these taboos, which in the end construct the woman's body as dirty. So, okay, let me not take more, even though I have my questions. I will leave it to the floor. First one. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
From personal experience at the moment, this idea of tiring and trying to fight these health, being tired from fighting these health institutions like hospitals, whatever, where you do encounter people who are really operating from, I don't know, ethics that are way expired, that are very much racialized, and you continue to fight and you become the problem if you are fighting for your family member that's in hospital that is being treated unfairly, and therefore you sort of internalize that debilitatingness of it as well. So it's a constant assault, not only on the person experiencing it, but on the families of the people that continue to try and fight, but yet when you fight, you become the enemy, which is the wildest encounter to have. And I think we often villainize the nurses and all of that, but it's like it's one of the most unlearned things that are still happening in terms of ethics of medical care and providing care, which is really, really wild. But yes, I just wanted to mention the documentary Dying for Gold. You've seen it. There you go.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question.
Thanks. I had two comments. Kharnita, we can always talk about this the other time, but I think you're absolutely right around female fear factory. And the other book, Tsitsi Dangaremga published a new book last year, where she says something like, the empire mutilates. And it's amazing to me that the two of you seem to be thinking along such similar lines. So I'd really like, I don't know if you've read it or when, but I do want your take on it when you get round to it. Because there's some deep insight in the woundedness of being oppressed that I think we need to kind of stay with it for a while. Then I wanted to say around female circumcision, and I'm an intellectual, so for me, always if we intellectually can get the right framework, then we can solve the problem. And the question I've always asked myself is, what is the link between circumcision of female bodies and the circumcision of intersex babies and adults?
Oh, yes.
And what is the link? Because why is it that it's okay to do the one, but not the other? And yet literally what it is an act of creating gender.
Yeah.
And so should we not be using a very similar analytical framework? Because there's no nice way to put this. I'm a lesbian. I've seen women look different And I'm asking myself, is there a particular high prevalence of intersex in North Africa where these things happen? Or what are the linkages? Because whenever I look, there's a complete and utter silence. And that to me seems to be the most dangerous thing. But who gets circumcised and why? And why are we creating female-bodied individuals under this broad and general custom? And of course what it does, it enables us to evade the moral high ground, because circumcision of intersex babies is as common in the West or in Southern Africa as anywhere else in the world. So there's not like there's an exception, and I guess the question I'm asking myself is there a continuum in the service of the binary? Or what is that silence really about? That's all.
Yeah. No, thank you. I was just to add to that, it's interesting how one of them is framed as care while the other one is framed as criminal. You know, meanwhile...
It's as debilitating whichever way you look at it.
Exactly.
It happens right here in the Eastern Cape.
Cool. And then there was a... Yeah. We'll do another round, don't worry.
I relate with
PJ.
It's okay. No comment. But I wanted to ask also, Joy, I don't know if you know a text from Elwood's Art on Our Minds, because the last chapter she speaks about blood, menstruation as well, and how it is taboo, but at the same time when it's God and when we're worshiping blood, something else. So maybe something you might look at. I also wanted to ask, what as a man, what do you believe? Do you practice some of these? I didn't hear your voice. I'm really interested in what you think, as a man, and what you practice.
Okay.
In that sense.
Cool.
I'm a sympathizer.
Let's start. And then we'll get through. Yeah.
The healthcare system has been racialized for a very long time, and what settler colonialism, the continuities of settler colonialism and apartheid healthcare did was to create these almost statistical deserts where we can't really see the long histories in which, black health was relegated to the margins, and it was, as in all spheres of life, right? Black life, our lives, our ancestors' lives were subject to varying forms of abandonment, and so our healthcare systems, are understaffed. They're underserved. The internalization of racism, reproduces some of that. But you're also working, and I think for me a question is, a lot of the healthcare workers themselves are debilitated because they don't have the resources, they don't have the kinds of resources and the scale of the work that they're supposed to do to actually even care sometimes for themselves. And so, and so it's part of that much larger massified system where where we all are in these social arrangements where, death, disablement, and debilitation, and some of these are like the female genital mutilation is the production of impairment, for example, but it has a debilitating effect, and if you're infected, if you're a man and you're circumcised and you get an infection, you'll have an impairment, or you can die, right, from the infection, but it's a mass sort of form of debilitation. But these systems are produced in a way, through negligence, through abandonment, that you are supposed to be worn down, and it creates a social relation of debilitation. And so it's, can I respond to your thing around self-care?
Okay, yeah.
Because I think, like self-care is part of that sort of neoliberal commodification of relating to ourselves as projects to work on. And, Lauren Ballant has this really wonderful article on slow death, and she says, we're all like within these sort of neoliberal economies, we become worn down, and we are at best allowed a kind of interruptive or lateral agency to only in a moment, effect some kind of change, but there's no real systemic change. And the thing is that we want the kinds of systemic change that doesn't require you to talk about self-care, right? Where it's ordinary and normal to actually be in systems where you're allowed time to rest, or you're allowed time to have relationships, etc., etc. So thank you. And thank you, Yvette, for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to respond to what I know and what I am very sure of. It's a standard for me. I don't say what I don't know. Yes, it's a standard. Now, she said, what is the silence all about? I'm from Southwest in Nigeria. It is assumed that when a woman speaks, she smells. There's a proverb that is constructed, in African literature. It says, anywhere where the woman speaks, she's smelling. Arere is a tree that grows in the forest, and it's used in very construction of good carpentry work. But at the same time, it smells. So they say when a woman speaks, she's what? She's smelling. It is expected that you are supposed to be seen and not heard as a woman. When you are heard, you become ostracized in the community. Everyone like, And that's why I was saying the woman is like, I was giving a symbolic meaning when I said like a woman with the issue of blood. So you don't want to live in a society, you don't want to live at the marge of the society. That's why the poem says, oh, mama, did you suffer for acceptance? This pain that released the echo of my piercing scream. So for you to be accepted in the hegemonic and patriarchal background, you have to know how to navigate your way, or the woman will be calling for her own trouble. So that's why when you say, what is the silence all about, it's part of it. Let me say this. I lectured in my university for 10 years, and immediately I got into gender studies. I remember that I was walking, Faculty of Arts. I was walking on the corridor, and a female lecturer said to me, all you feminist womanists on this campus, we are going to throw you out. We are going to kick you away. And I responded in the affirmative. Faculty of Arts, you have staircases. And I said, before you kick me, I will kick away your father, your mother, your generation, all of you will be kicked away. On the corridor, you know what I mean? He looked at me and said, hey, you, all these feminists will kick you away. So when he said it, we are in the Faculty of Arts, we are there together. So I looked at him and said, you, your father, your mother, your generation, everything that has to do with you will be wiped off. And not all women can do that. So I addressed it on the corridor. That's to tell you how firm it is. I worked in a university where a woman cannot be the dean. Faculty of Arts, a female dean is a taboo. So they will tell you a woman to sit down and decide the affairs of the issues that is happening in Faculty of Arts. Go to the sciences. Yes. So even when the first time I had to do a presentation on this, I had to be friends with my male colleagues. And I remember that every male colleague that was my friend had to sit in front as I was going to present something. Yes, it was that serious. And so when the male people are talking at me, my male colleagues are giving it back to them. So that's where the silence comes from. You don't want to die before your time because you want to hold the baton for others to shine. So there's the Ecclesiastes 9, and wisdom is profitable to direct. That's why I was talking about stigmatization. I didn't get a postdoc so easily. I was out of job with a PhD. And I stayed close to 4 years in South Africa without a stable income. You know how traumatic that is? Very traumatic. And I'm not ashamed to say it. And that's why I can do this, I can do translation, I can do this, I can do what, you're just doing everything, going for all the trainings. It was traumatic. PhD Rhodes University after 4 decades of my life. And I'm not ashamed to say, this is our space. So it's even good in South Africa. So that's where the silence comes in. You don't want to do that to yourself. Now, when you talk about female genital mutilation, there are categories. There's the cutting, there is the infubation, where the sensitive part it's like amputated, renders the woman like a zombie. She would not be able to respond to any sexual feeling. So this comes, and then when we talk about North Africa, it's tougher over there. Why did I decide to talk about this? Now, this is African feminism. As a 34, as a lecturer in the university, I wasn't married. As at the time I was going to marry, this is true life experience now. I know a group of women in the church who came to me and said, we know that you're an academic, but you see, we need to prepare your body specially for your spouse. It's just, and I'm active, it's just a slight cut. We have a nurse here you'll be fine. Your body needs to be good for the man. I'm not telling you theory. I'm telling you practical. As a female lecturer in a federal university in my country. So I said, these things happen now, but it's done in the... You know what I mean? Now, let me say this. My supervisor, when I was going to take up this, she called me, she said, I can't do this. I'm happy that you are doing it. I pray for you to succeed. She would hand over documents to me and say, look, I'm too old for this now. Joy, please go and speak for us. So these are some of the challenges that you are facing. Your family may even reject you. And when your home begins to reject you, so how are you going to cope? So that's what I can respond to when you talk about silence and the woman's body. You have to be able to know how to navigate your way. I must say that I feel so happy talking about this because I have a call to speak for women. I don't get threatened, it was bad, no job, but we didn't die. We're here now. We've succeeded and we're moving higher. No Pharaoh stops us. No Pharaoh is going to stop us. We're going to move. We take it by force. Okay, so that's by the way. I'm only explaining. Let me say this. I would not present this thing in a conference that you have male, female. I would not do it. I would look for another. People wise. What we're all going to speak to and have peace of mind. But I'm telling you, I would not go to a conference in America where you have the male, female, and do this presentation. No, I would not. I'll be exposing myself. I don't want to do that. So that's a bit of silence and the woman's body and all that. PhD has the politics, the P. So you have to know how to. Thank you very much.
All right. So mine was how I feel.
Your positionality.
Yeah. That's actually why I ventured into this study some years back. When I learned we have some of these taboos that are still affecting our women, so we decided to look at this. So my position is they are not actually friendly. They shouldn't continue. But the truth is this. We as Africans know that there are some things we cannot undo. A practical example is this. While my colleague was working on this, she stumbled on this finding. A woman from another community, that's not in a Udoh community, another community, was paid to go work on a farm for somebody. That woman gave birth to twins. And there is a stream in that community that forbids women who are giving birth to twins from entering. That woman is a visitor. 3 months ago, the woman, did I say 3 months? 3 weeks ago, the woman went into that stream to bath after having worked. Unluckily for her, the water took her. But she did not know. So somebody saw that, ran to the village head, that a stranger is drowning, or was drowning rather, the village had to go and call the chief priest. So they did some incantation. Yeah, because if that woman had died there, the community would have, that woman's community would have come there for war. So that was their plea. There should not be war. You are our mother. If there is war, your children will die. This woman is a visitor. Please release her. And that woman was seen, while they were doing the incantation, the woman was seen coming, she came back, sure. So, you see, that is not, this is not a physical thing. It is superphysical. It is intergenerational. We are born to come see them. So that's why I said there are some of the things we cannot undo. So in as much as we cannot undo them, the custodians are there actually doing what? Pleading with their ancestors to soften the things. And I'm sure that is why some of these things are, I don't think that most of these things would have been softened without their own this thing, collaboration. I'm not sure. So we still need to be following them. That's my position. We need to keep following them. There are those I know that of course you can, like saying a woman should not enter the village hall. So when there's a dispute, you as the woman, even if it is against you, you stay outside by the window and they are talking. You just listen to them. Because that one does not need any condition. So of course that one they could take it out. The one that the woman is not supposed to be part of the parents' inheritance. Yeah, those that can be decided. So, and we see they are being decided now in favor of the women through liberal feminism. So I feel we should still do what? Keep talking to ourselves. Thank you.
Guys, it's 4 o'clock, but I need to ask this question. One more round, and then like 5 minutes, okay? But 1, 2, 3. Listen, I can't leave you in good faith and not ask, what do you mean by the liberal and radical position? And in asking that question, you deciding the liberal, how much of that choice in choosing the liberal position is also influenced by your positionality as a man, as someone who has a lot to lose by having women take on the radical position? That is my question. Next question.
Okay.
I really want to just quickly speak on FGM because I'm also West African, I'm from Australia. And FGM is so our radical feminist stand on FGM is violence to women, violence against women. But what happens in our culture is it's done through a secret society, and that is considered traditional and cultural, right? And the discourse with FGM, what makes it a little bit tricky for us is because most of the discourse is colonial, it's Western centered. It's like a white man coming to say to you, stop doing this. So our people are taking it like, this is a white man telling us to end our tradition. And culture is made for human beings. It can change.
Yes.
So the culture you're speaking about, and it's me addressing both things, is something that is changeable once it affects people's lives in negative ways. And what is happening in our community now that we're seeing is survivors of FGM leading the fight to end FGM. They have been part of the secret societies. They know what it means. They are the ones speaking up against it. They are the ones in front of the fight to end FGM in Sierra Leone. And I think that has given us so much clout in a way that one of the things that they're doing now is canceling FGM totally for kids below the age of 18 for children. And we're still pushing for it to be totally against anybody, because even the 18 discourse is a colonial discourse, because we know in our African societies that at the age of 18, most of us still live with our parents. They have influence over what we do and we cannot do. Also, just finally to end what my point is, I don't think this is a feminist space. This is a space where it's a safe space, as our speaker has said this morning. And I don't think it will play any one of us justice to come here and be told how to be feminist. We're allowed to shout, we're allowed to fight, we're feminist killjoy, we're allowed to be angry about systems and structures of oppression that have oppressed us for years. So to be told how to behave, how to be a liberal feminist, and not to be a radical feminist, I don't think this is the space for such discussion. So as an activist myself,
I cannot stay here and not say this, so I needed to voice this out.
Okay, quickly,
Oh,
let me
one more
just...
question. Oh, sorry, one more question, and then...
it was a comment.
Yeah, go for it.
Mine was mainly, thank you so much for this very insightful, shocking panel. I wanted to say that after this whole panel, the conclusion that I've reached is basically that healthcare, religion, and cultural institutions, basically what PJ said, have expired ethics that don't function to serve society anymore after listening to just all of you speak, and basically they are debilitating. Yes, thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
That female genital mutilation, the practice varies from region to region. So we need to put that in mind. It varies from region to region. How it's managed in the southwestern Nigeria, from where I come from, is different from, every society has its own rules. So you have to just know, like for North Africa, it's more serious. So as I speak, that practice from southwestern Nigeria, where I come from, it's on board. Some people now, Corinne is not here. We discussed it at the African Feminist Group. In the UK, mothers now, or fathers, diplomatically send their girl child back home to secretly carry out this practice because, like you said, the strength of the wild ox is failing as a way of taming the woman. You can't tame us. We tame ourselves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Final words?
I just want to comment, actually. I think, even as we think about how these sort of systems of violence make and unmake us through impairing acts like, circumcision, and people are like, there are different ways to be sexual, and people, there are people who still find a way through that violence to not be sheep or zombies and find other modes of life. And I think we also want to remember that even as systems of violence unmake us, remake us, that it's not always determinative. And I think that's important, that when we're framing some of these arguments, that we remember that the shaping of them and how they arrive in the world also arrives into colonial discourses that already treat black lives as if we aren't speaking subjects or subjects who have, intellectual and epistemic relations to the things we think about.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. For my point, the men, or what I say, the village heads in this case, are like custodians. They don't own these things. They are like a medium. That's where I'm coming from, where I'm talking about the being liberal. You cannot just go and cut or touch the tiger's tail. Yeah, because when you touch, it's just like that. Come on, give me this thing. I want this thing. You want him to go and beg should I say the diviner? So you can't shout at him. You can't force him. You lobby. Let's do this thing. This thing has to happen. It has been happening. Thus far, that is the approach that has been taken. So my point is, I feel we should still do it that way. As far as these sacred things in the traditional society are concerned. But the other part, the radical feminism, could apply any other way, but I'm afraid it may not work. We want to do it this other way. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the speakers. And I would just like to leave you guys with these words. Like, just remember the world we live in, the world that we are looking for, will probably require the death of the world as we know it. So, yeah, please think on that. Thank you very much. You guys downstairs.